Guess who's back, fellas? It sure has been a while, huh? Sorry for the radio silence and the 3-month gap, I think, between videos. Yeah, yeah, I'm back. I have a newly designed Sona as well for, representing me in videos. And I have a project I'm here to announce. Well, project. I'll explain. I've been working on it for a few years by now, I guess. Now, this is a video I've wanted to make for actually a bit now, but I finally decided to just, do it. So, what exactly am I talking about? Well, I've had this thing going on, it's mainly been in my head, of a story. A story involving the Sonic universe. As we know, I do like, Sonic. That's most of my channel. And, well, this is my own version of the Sonic timeline. Of course, this one mostly revolves around the Sonic IDW comics, which, by the way, happen to be canon, so I'm mainly talking about, an alternate version of the canon Sonic timeline. So no, I'm not going to just randomly have Archie characters thrown in. It's mostly the canon timeline with multiple differences that sets it apart. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Sonic the Hedgehog, Diamond Spark. Yeah, don't worry, I fully intend on making a better version of the title, but, either way, it's still gonna be Diamond Spark. So what exactly is Diamond Spark, though? Well, again, it's my own version of the canon Sonic timeline, where things basically start out, the same as the canon timeline, with a few differences, and it just devolves into almost completely different stuff. I also intend on animating this all, because I just want to make this an animated series, which would also probably require me to get better at animation and also get better at drawing, but that part's not important for right now. I should mention that the story would mostly revolve around the Sonic IDW comics, because I really like the Sonic IDW comics. They're very good. I recommend them. I don't care what the people on X, Twitter, whatever the hell say, so. Oh, I should definitely explain why it's called Diamond Spark. And it's because it's very much revolving around, the Diamond Cutters, Sonic IDW, specifically, kind of the new ones and also the old ones. And the Spark part of it is because of the main character, I guess, of the series, this series for it. Sonic would still technically be the main character of, the entire world, but I'll explain it later. Also, fun fact, Protection of Angel Island is actually canon to this timeline. Honestly, just as a bit of fun world building and stuff. Though I've yapped a lot and I got a lot more yapping to do, so why don't I get into the new characters of Diamond Spark? And afterwards, I'll cover any additional information needed, just not to fully spoil the story or anything, just enough so that people know exactly what's going on. Well, not exactly, but you get it. So I'm gonna start off with the new characters that aren't exactly the main first appearance of a new character, main character kind of characters, So first on the new character roster list, why don't I showcase who is actually one of my favorite of my own characters, Pale the Wolf. So who exactly is Pale? Well, she's a wolf that was born with a form of albinoism, that condition that makes living creatures bleached white and stuff, you know that. Yeah, she kind of has a form of that, except it's her fur and her skin and her eye color, and just if it's a natural part of her body, it's white. Aside from the blue marks on her body, which I'll get into. Pale is a 12 to 15-year-old wolf who has the power her to manipulate light, and she actually gets stronger the brighter the area is. So the more light reaching her, the more powerful she becomes. She wears a black scarf, her black gloves, shoes that she custom made herself, by the way, and a bunch of bandages is around her limbs and tail, possibly because of something that happened in her past. I won't get into that, but possibly she has some reason of having those on. Pale sort of acts like Sonic, but that's not really the full story about her personality, which is tied to her whole backstory, which I swear I'll get to. It's just, I kinda gotta explain this stuff first. Pale is a speed character, similar to Sonic, Shadow, SBO, blah blah blah. And she basically goes at the speed of light because of the light powers and stuff. And I think now I kind of want to get into the story and explain some of the other stuff about her. Pale was born very different to the people around her. She was born with the whole being like completely white aside from the blue markings she has on her body. And, well, people in her community didn't really like that because it was different, and they didn't like different because it's different, and therefore they see it as a threat. I think that's why people do this. I don't know. But I know that people don't like different. And so, of course, Pale grew up with self-esteem issues, considering how often she was getting bullied for just existing, really. She always was trying to be a people pleaser, because she wanted to be liked. She didn't want to live the rest of her life if people just hating who she is. Of course, though, no matter how much she tried, she couldn't really get most people in her community to accept her for who she was, like, even to look, because she just looked so different. And so she ended up adopting Sonic's personality after seeing what Sonic had been able to do, even though he was different. A blue hedgehog being able to run at speeds that are like near the speed of sound, yeah, that's different, but people loved him. So Pale naturally looked at him and thought, well, if I just become like him, people will like me, right? Of course, though, it didn't really. She did try to keep the personality, though, trying to replace her old personality, having been much more nerdy, I'd say. She was a big fan of Dragon Ball. She still is, but she now just had this mask up of being a completely confident person. She tried to mask who she was on the inside, seeing that as, well, the only way to get people to like her. And, well, she wanted to be happy like this. And to be fair, she is still, like, kind of happy to be like this confident person. But deep down, she knows she's just not letting herself be who she is just for people to like her. And this was consistent until one day, one specific day, during the events of Sonic Forces. And that's going to be a common theme, by the way. A lot of the characters' backstories in Diamond Spark have a lot to do with forces. During these events, Pale was kind of just destroying badniks with her powers. They aren't really good against the power of being shot with light and stuff. And she was doing pretty good for someone who had like no basic combat training. It's kind of just because of the powers, honestly. But then, of course, things went bad whenever she met Infinite. Now, since Infinite has the Phantom Ruby and is also in Forces, Pale, of course, gets her ass handed to her. And yeah, I know Infinite's a fraud, but like, Pale doesn't really know how to actually fight. She's just been winging it the entire time. So of course, Infinite's gonna kick her ass, and now she's within an inch of her life, a sprained ankle, so she can't really escape, and it's looking pretty grim until one person ends up saving her, and that person I'll get into when I talk about the next character, her on this list. However, what you need to know about her is that she is a ice-based character, and she's working with the Resistance at this point, and saves Pale, but like of course she's still not good enough to defeat Infinite, so she's able to help Pale escape. But of course, Infinite's not gonna let them escape, so he sends a Phantom Metal Sonic after them. However, Silver saves them, and they don't get defeated. They don't get offed by the Phantom Metal Sonic, and Silver leaves before he's actually able to conversate with them. But they're saved by him. The Mystery Ice character decides to invite Pale to join the Resistance, and seeing that Pale didn't really have a lot of other options, and was definitely seeking an adventure now, she decided, why not join? And then the person that saved her and then got saved by Silver, her, and her became very good friends because they both were, pretty weird on the outside. And I'll explain the rest of that story when I get to the next character. And now that I've covered that, I think it's time to cover the ref sheet and also some final fun facts for the road. And for the covering of the ref sheet, I've decided to do this in video form. So let's just get this over with. We have Pale's front, as you can see. This is the front side, well, kind of like it angled, but this is what you'd see if you're looking at roughly her front area, Then we have the side view of her. As you can see, her muzzle, kind of curves up, and it is definitely there. Plus, it's not a muzzle, it's its snout. Plus, the bottom of her shoe I have designed, because I realized, hey, I should probably design the bottom of these shoes. Speaking of shoes, I might as well cover the fact that they are very kind of detailed and big. Like, they got all these red stripes and stuff. But yeah. The back view is just the back view, honestly. Nothing too special. Of course, we got the Pale doing the Sonic Rush pose to reference the fact that she acts a lot like Sonic. And then I also done some emotives, Like, for example, when she's sad, her ears droop down. When she's angry, her blue parts of her body turn yellow and start just emanating the light. Plus, there's the yellow eyes, and like this stuff happens. We got her, but like she's just unimpressed. Oh yeah, we also got a Sketchhog version of her and an Icon version of her, which will be consistent with these rough sheets. Oh yeah, we also got Pale, but she's embarrassed by something. And of course, we got Pale looking cool as crap, after emitting from a light, Also, dude, okay. Also, we have a bunch of photon things that I've created, since she can create stuff out of light. A photon clone is just like a clone of her. That's just kind of the point of it, made of light, The photon spear is kind of like Chaos Spear, except, well, it can also combine with other attacks. And the photon glaive is kind of just a glaive made of light. So, yeah. And now it's time for the fun facts. So, fun fact number 1. Pale is lesbian. Fun fact number 2. Pale actually enjoys doing a little bit of knitting, Just a little bit of fun knitting, Just kind of that. Fun fact 3, she does not actually like the color white because of her condition. She's not exactly preferable to the color. She's okay with it if it has to be used, but she definitely prefers not using it. Until she learns he used white for the decals on her Sonic Racing Crosswords car. Anyway, we get to finally move on to the next character. Holy crap, this might actually be a lot longer of a video than I thought. Now, this is the character I was alluding to, who, during the Pale discussion, please welcome Frost the Hound. Now, Frost is a hound with ice powers and is always very cold. So cold that her lungs freeze over. Yeah, that's why she wears the mask, to keep her lungs warm. Her design consists of a scarf with a gradient pattern, and a sweater that she wears all the time, blue gloves, blue boots, and a white mask that she wears to, well, again, keep her lungs warm. Beyond this, she's also 12 to 15, similar to Pale, and has her, ice powers that I mentioned previously. And she can form these into weapons such as a sword, or can form it into like spikes or just freeze things. It's very versatile. Also, he gains more power in colder areas. However, she gets a lot weaker in the warmer areas. Frost is a flight type character, not because she can actually fly, but it also kind of like counts as acceleration and technique and whatever the heck Sega wants it to count as, it counts as. So she's a flight character, but she doesn't actually fly. And of course, this is similar to characters like Tails, Rouge, and Charmy. An additional thing to note is that Frost is also kind of shy, a little bit introverted. Not to like the point of like Whisper or someone like that, but she's kind of shy and kind of introverted. And now it's about time I get into her backstory and how it relates to what I was saying about Pale's backstory earlier. For as long as Frost could remember, she was very different to the people around her. Entirely because of her ice abilities and her freezing over lungs and always being cold. So whenever she, was just living her life, she would usually have to have some heating surface or something to keep her from freezing to death in normal climates, which, as you can probably tell, isn't exactly preferable, but, she made it work. Of course, she was always shy about the fact that, this was something that she had to deal with, and yeah, that's honestly fair. Like, it's not exactly a normal thing to have to deal with, but, she dealt with it because she was kind of just handed those cards in life. And this is pretty much how things be. Until the events of Sonic Forces. Yeah, we're back with this. I told you this was going to be a consistent thing. Now, during Forces, Frost decided to join the Resistance in order to, make use of her ice powers that she, just kind of has. Get a little bit of training, help out a bit, just kind of basic stuff. Then one day, whenever she was doing a supply run for the Resistance, she heard Infinite's laugh, and despite the fact that Infinite's laugh could only mean horrible things, she decided to follow it, despite her fear, but, she was, capable enough, she thought. As Frost followed the laugh, she found Pale, in her broken ankle, beaten up state, and, of course, Frost decided to dive into action and save Pale, from Infinite, before helping Pale escape. But then Infinite decides to be a little sore loser and send a Phantom Metal Sonic after them. Silver saves them, yada yada yada. Then Frost gets a little crushy crush on Silver, which goes nowhere, but it's there. Additionally, Frost and Pale become very good friends after this, and being able to understand each other like no one else around them can, just becoming fast friends, working together very often, becoming a nearly unstoppable duo in the restoration whenever it becomes the restoration after the events of Forces, and they make their first actual appearance in the main storyline of Diamond Spark whenever the next character that I'm going to talk about's first arc appears. And now that I've finished up with the backstory stuff, I can finally get to covering the ref sheet. Ref sheet time again. Let's go. Of course, we got our angled front view of Frost. As you can see, there are also some white markings on Frost's body, which aren't necessarily important. They're kind of just patterning. Of course, we got the design of the mask. The oxygen mask to prevent her lungs from freezing over. She can't take it off for short periods, though, because she needs to, eat and stuff. Here's the gloves under the sleeves, them fluffy sleeves. We got the bottom of her boots, these right here. Her freaking face right here, without the mask. Yeah, I know, her muzzle is, very hard to kind of, make out, but, it's there, muzzle, snout, whatever. The side view, of course. Gotta have the side view. Oh, and an additional thing, the eyes don't really have, pupils, I guess? I don't know. This is just kind of how I do the eyes. I don't really know. I don't really know why that would be the case, but, here we go with the back view, if this thing will stop blurring. And we got whenever she can make an ice sword, a small sketch of whenever she makes ice spikes. A note that says that she rarely gets angry, because she doesn't really get angry very often. She's very chill, but if she does get angry, well, you're screwed. Well, she's not that powerful or anything. It's just you did something that pissed her off. Of course, Sketchhog, Icon, just her looking, I'm not really sure what emotion I was trying to convey here, and a bit of a shocked expression. And now that I've covered the ref sheet, it's about time I get over into the 3 fun facts for Frost. Fun fact number 1. Similarly to how Pale is lesbian, Frost is actually bisexual. Fun fact number 2. Frost's body is actually so cold that the moment she enters a room, it just lowers the temperature of the room. Don't ask how that works, I don't really know. And fun fact number 3, her preferred method of travel is through ice skating. Unfortunately, Frost is one of my least developed characters, but I do still like what I currently have for her. And by the way, now that we're done with Frost, let's move on to the third character of this whole thing, Metal Legacy. And no, he has no connection to me whatsoever. Metal Legacy is the robotic version of the last character I'll talk about, who, by the way, no, isn't actually called Legacy. It's a different character. Additionally, he stole the Gizoid's gimmick of being able to copy other characters' powers and abilities. And it's due to, copying biodata, but, it's not, the same as, Metal Sonic's biodata copy. I'll get into that later. The character is designed pretty much how you'd expect any other Metal version of a character to be designed. Of course, having, the glowing red eyes, blah, blah, blah. Just being a soulless fake of who they are designed after. However, in order to really explain a lot more about Metal Legacy, I'm going to have to just skip to talking about his backstory, because that's kind of where most of everything is. Oh, and I should also mention the fact that he's a power character, unlike his organic counterpart, and is more similar to Knuckles, Mighty, and Vector. Metal Legacy started life as just one of those random robots made during the classic era as just prototypes. One of the battle bots from Sonic Superstars. Yeah, that's what Metal Legacy started life as. Actually designed by Metal Sonic himself, because Eggman in this timeline just let Metal Sonic screw around a bit. He also created another robot, but that robot doesn't currently matter right now. Metal Legacy and the other robot would be sealed away, though, because they didn't really have much of a purpose, but they could still be utilized until they were reawakened in the modern era by Neo Metal Sonic. Upon being awakened, they also realized that they had a few modifications done to their body. For instance, their iron metal armor kind of, the metal that makes up their body was now made of a version of the metal virus that was weaker, but also just modified to be able to form more of a construct rather than, infect others, though it could still infect others, and also the ability to steal abilities and forms. Neometal informs the two robots that they would be part of a new legion of sorts that he's creating, a team called the Metal Legion. And no, this has nothing to do with the DCX Sonic crossover Metal Legion. I came up with this name before that. Just look at my blue sky. I've had this name as part of this before that ever happened. But anyway, hey, what exactly would this Metal Legion be? Well, it'd be a robot version, like Legion. It'd be a team of the frickin' metal versions of characters, honestly. Led by Neo Metal Sonic and Neo Metal Tails and Neo Metal Knuckles and Neo Metal Amy. Because yes, I'm bringing the Metal Amy and Tails and Knuckles back and giving them Neo forms. So Neo Metal takes both Metal Legacy and the other robot out and, has them look for a form to take. Because the first character they copy, he is the form they'll have. So, of course, they were looking for some pretty powerful characters, and Metal Legacy ended up finding the character of which case I'll talk about next. Meanwhile, the other robot happened to find Whisper and became my Metal Whisper design. I don't know if any of y'all remember that, but yeah, I posted that one time. Upon copying the data Metal Legacy copied, though, it kind of screwed up his programming because of the fact that the person he copied wasn't exactly a normal person. And I'll get into that whenever I talk about that character. But what you need to know now is that it caused a sort of change in Metal Legacy's programming / directive. And he became a little bit more self-aware and self-sufficient and also more independent, but he also was still locked to the coding he was left with, and it's a whole mess. Metal Legacy after this had a bit of a seething hatred for the person he copied, seeing them as a mistake, an anomaly that has to be erased. And he wouldn't be necessarily wrong, but he saw them as a mess to everything, a disruption to order. And now he had the same seething hatred for this person that Vile from Mega Man X has for X. And if you know Mega Man X, you know Vile is a D1 hater. So, yeah, that's some pretty intense hatred. But in order to avoid getting into too many spoilers about his story, I think it's about time I get into his reference sheet. Metal Legacy's reference sheet. Let's go. Metal Legacy's design, of course. We already know how this is. A front angle, we got his icon. I never got around to finishing the Sketchhog, and honestly, he's just really hard to design as a Sketchhog. I don't know, maybe I'll finish that eventually. We got the side view. We got the back view. By the way, he is kinda inaccurate to the character he copied, because he technically didn't copy them specifically, which is why he's called Metal Legacy, despite the character he copied not being actually Legacy. But as you can see, he can create weapons from the metal virus that composes his body. And, of course, the biodata that copying allows him to, use things like Silver's telekinesis, Tangle's tail, Blaze's fire, blah, blah, blah. These are just rough sketches. We also got a rough sketch of him in his healing state because, yeah, he can kind of just heal from most every damage. The only place that actually hurt him is his core. Of course, we got overcharge mode, which is just him frying his own circuits to increase his power and speed, decreasing his own defense. He's also taller than the person he copied, but that doesn't really matter right now. Of course, we got the laser eye thing. Not actually, he doesn't actually have laser eyes, but like, you know, the meme. Metal Sonic, whatever. Whenever it's like glowing. We got him just like unimpressed, I guess. And we got him using the defense matrix or dark shield. I still got to cover these. One of his attacks. Being able to summon metal virus spikes from the ground and shoot them out in the area around him, or shoot them in the direction he's facing, you know, going as far as his perception. Also, within his core, if this thing will stop blurring on me, okay, he has this here cylinder which contains every biodata he copies, like all the biodata he copies. So he loses that right there, and he can no longer use the other abilities he steals. And of course, it's time for the fun facts. So, fun fact number 1. Malexi's biodata copying spans across the entire person's lifespan up to the point he copies. So, he could copy Sonic's Frontiers abilities if he doesn't even have them, considering that Frontiers has already happened. Fun fact number 2. Malexi, while being capable of using Chaos abilities and Chaos energy, can't use it without forfeiting his ability to heal himself and also his ability to form weapons and anything else that requires him to be capable of using the metal virus composing his body. And fun fact number 3, Malexi is actually a pretty intelligent character when it comes to combat smarts and strategy, but he is a complete idiot when it comes to not letting his pride get the best of him. And now we're on to the final character of Diamond Spark that I will be revealing currently. He is technically the main character. Of course, Sonic's like the main character of the timeline, but I already explained that. And his backstory is a lot more away from everyone else's. Melexi did copy his data though, and later on, like, everyone kind of meets up with him, and he's kind of like a big catalyst of things sometimes, and he's kind of the main reason the timeline diverges so much. So please welcome the Guardian Angel's prodigy, Teal the cat. Now, at the start of Diamond Spark, Teal is 8 to 9 years old, and by the end, he's like 12, 13 years old. Side note, I know that Teal's head is like kind of big in like this reference sheet. It's kind of because I never actually make a good reference sheet for Teal for some reason. But like his head would actually be like more proportional to his body. Teal's design consists of a bunch of bandages that are on his body. For example, his left leg, left arm, and right ear, plus the parts that are on his tail. That actually splits like a fork, by the way. That's not just fur at the end of his tail. That's actually how his tail splits. And Teal wears these bandages because of scars from his past, which I'll get into when I talk about his backstory. Additionally, he has the same boots, cloak, and a similar mask, plus the same pants as Whisper does, which I will get into why he does whenever I talk about his backstory again. He's missing the arm pads and the knee pads though, and also his shirt is, unlike Whisper, is a long hung frickin' sleeved white shirt instead of what Whisper usually wears. An additional thing to know is that Teal has the power of, well, Chaos energy and Hypergoan energy mixed together, and emits from his body as a golden electrical energy. However, it can also emit from his body as a black electrical energy if he's in a bad enough mood. Which, by the way, he also has like a very bad problem with mood swings, which again I'll get into later. Now, for everyone else, I've covered what their team character type is. You know, like the power, the speed, the acceleration, technique, flight, whatever the hell. So, what exactly would Teal's be? It's not power, unlike Metalexic. It's not speed, like Pale. So, is it tech? No, it's not that either. It's all three. Now, this is a call I decided to make because of, well, a few reasons. One is that he has the damage output of a power character, yet he has this flight slash acceleration. Like, he can't really fly most of the time, but it's kind of more of a acceleration type kind of thing for him. But he does have that attribute, and he is pretty much fast like a speed character. So honestly, he's just all three. But with that all out of the way, I think it's about time I get into his backstory to see what makes him tick and also just explain so much more about what this character even is about. Teal's story begins in Sunset Heights, you know, that one level from Forces? That's the city he grew up in. And you know, it's not the best life for him. Similarly to Pale, Teal was bullied for his outside differences, his tail. But unlike Pale, he was also bullied for the powers he has, which, to be fair, were also just really dangerous. The Chaos and Hypergone energy, which he didn't really know was both of those at the time, was just really explosive, really dangerous, and he wasn't exactly the most emotionally stable person to ever exist. And considering the chaos energy is connected with emotions, and Teal was already in very negative moods at the time, yeah, not the best combination. And it didn't really help that Teal already had an abusive father, and his mother left him when he was merely a child. Well, younger child. He's still like 8 to 9 years old at this time. So, yeah, plus everyone in his hometown is calling him an outcast and stuff, so... Additionally, Teal's father is the reason Teal has all these scars to begin with. Time skip to Forces, and Teal has been abandoned while everyone else either turned tail and ran from Infinite or got killed by Infinite. Teal seeing all the illusions, all of everything Infinite was doing. So now Teal was traumatized even further, and of course he was living in dumpsters trying to just feed off whatever he could, struggling to just not make anyone mad, hoping that you wouldn't make anyone mad. Additionally, Infinite had given Teal the phobia of illusions in general. But things started looking up for him whenever he met Whisper and Mimic. This was still during the time before Mimic had betrayed the Diamond Cutters, and was before the time they all got their masks too. But that part won't really matter for right now. Teal had nowhere really to go, and of course, Whisper decided, hey, you know, he has nowhere to go, so until we find him a place, why don't we just take him with us? Mimic, of course, was opposed to this, but nobody cares what Mimic thinks, and they took him anyway. Whenever Teal ended up meeting the rest of the Diamond Cutters, he was actually given a full-on outfit, some, you know, food, since he was kind of just eating garbage, and heck, even a place to sleep. Like, they were just being so nice to him, and like Teal wasn't used to it. And of course he still didn't like trust it, and he also was like way too scared about doing wrong by them and stuff. But these were still the nicest people he had ever met in his entire life, which I know is very depressing. And as time progressed, Teal grew more and more attached to them. Aside from Mimic, everyone but Mimic he was growing attached to. Mimic was not really bothering with him all too much, but yeah, Teal was growing attached to the Diamond Cutters, and it's kind of obvious why. They were the only people who had treated him like an actual person. They cared for him, they loved him, and yeah, the original plan was to find him a place to stay, and then they would, be gone. But they couldn't really figure out how to balance the trying to find a place for Teal to stay and the Eggman base stuff that they were doing. And eventually, especially considering that everyone in the team, aside from Mimic, had started to grow to see Teal as just another member of the team. And Teal was actually pretty useful to them as well, being able to supercharge their Wispens and stuff with his power. So eventually, they just made it to where he was just a part of the team. He never left them. He was their little brother. Of course, though, Teal mostly clinged to Whisper and learned from Whisper. Not to say that he didn't learn from anyone else, though, but he mostly picked up a lot of his traits, his attributes from Whisper, because, well, he just learned a lot from her and was clinging to her side 24/7. Of course, though, then Mimic betrays the team. We all know that story, but yep, it confused Teal, hurt Teal, because even though him and Mimic didn't really have a very good relationship, he still trusted Mimic a lot. And the fact that Mimic would just do all this, it hurt, it confused him. And now he was clinging to Whisper's side even more than ever because she was the last one left. But now, the people who gave him the name Teal, the people who loved him and cared about him, were reduced to only one. And that leads into the events of IDW issue 9, otherwise known as the beginning of the Diamond Spark storyline. Yep, that's pretty much the backstory. So let's get into the reference sheets, shall we? Time to make this the next freaking ref sheet coverage. Yay. We have angled front view Teal without the cloak and mask. And we have cloak and mask Teal. By the way, this is Teal aged around 11 to 12. So whenever he's 11 to 12, this is kind of how he looks. We have his icon right here, his Sketchhog version. We got the sparks flying around him, yada yada yada. The side view, look at that little guy, he's a little guy. The back view. A note of Teal being capable of talking to wisps, which I probably should have mentioned earlier in the video, but yeah, he has the capability of talking to wisps. Don't ask him to tell you how to do it, though. He doesn't know how to do that. Oh yeah, we also got Teal hanging upside down from his tail. This is completely unfinished, but, whatever. We have Teal's scars underneath the bandages. Those are very bad scars. We got just... I don't know what emotion I was trying to convey here. I do know that here, Teal is stressing out or sad or scared or whatever the heck. And whenever his ears droop down, he starts sparking rapidly. We also have happy Teal, and he's happy. Wow, I really screwed up those eyes. I never make a good Teal rough sheet. I don't know why. We have Angie Teal. He's Angie. And we have Teal, but you should probably run away from him. This is Teal, but Phase 0 Dark State. I'm not going to explain that further. Oh yeah, we have Teal howling like wolf because he copied Whisper. And he copied her behaviors. And honestly, I just like the idea that the characters in Sonic are acting like the animals they're based on. We got Gasp Teal, based on Gasp Whisper. We got Chaos Blade Teal. Whenever he's... This also shows that, the mask's eye scope thing can actually change color to match his power. And also he has Chaos Daggers, which he can throw at people whenever they're being fucked. So, yeah, also mask. Also, here are just some rough sketches of Teal, whose freaking wisp abilities. Ghost Teal, you know, like Ghost Wisp. He also just has Chaos Dagger, uh, Pink Spike Teal. He's got a special Spin Dash for that. This is just his normal ball form. A special, uh, custom Wisp Spun for Teal, called a Train Whiff. That's less powerful than Whispers, but it still works, and it's significantly more safer and easier to use. Laser Teal. Again, these are just rough sketches, but you know, they're here. And now that that's all said and done with, it's time for the 3 Teal fun facts. Fun fact number 1. Teal canonically eats so fast that if you give him like an entire apple and blink for 1 second, he's going to have eaten the entire thing and have left no crumbs, no core, nothing. Fun fact number 2. Whatever Whisper's moral compass is, Teal's moral compass is. So if Whisper says something as moral or something, you know, whatever Whisper believes, Teal believes. And fun fact number 3. Whereas Metal Legacy is the one who just copies and steals abilities, his powers, etc., and just steals, copies, whatever, Teal is the one who learns and adapts and gets, you know, taught how to do this. And with that all being said, it's about time I get into the final details that I need to discuss for this video. For starters, I don't want this to end up like my Forces rewrite, where I ended up just giving up on it like most of the way through. But, you know, I still don't have like a full-on script yet either. I know the basic direction I'm going with the story, and the first parts of it will heavily follow the IEW comics, but then later on, it, like I said earlier in the video, would devolve into more different things, which would lead to characters like Metal Legacy appearing. And I'm probably forgetting some stuff, which I'll probably leave in a pinned comment if I remember it. But I also want to say something about regarding any potential help, you know, with the actual Diamond Spark project itself. Now, while this would be a free fan project, I would probably need voice actors for the characters. You know, Whisper, Teal, blah, blah, blah. I do kind of need, like, voice actors. And also someone to help me, well, at least one person to help me. He make, like, themes and stuff for the characters, so that I'm not just completely ripping from Sonic games and stuff, so, yeah. And so, in order to apply, or just kind of hang out and see what's going on with the Diamond Spark stuff, I've created the Diamond Spark Discord server, which will be in the description. Since when the did you have Discord? Oh. Hi, Real Life Legacy. And I've had it since late 2025. Secondly, why are you still using it after all the drama going around about it? Dude, I doubt most people even got past Pale in the video, let alone got even to this part. So, can I just wrap up the video and just finish it up, please? Fine, you degenerate bastard. Man, I hate that guy. Anyway, I think I can wrap up the video now. So, if you want to help out with Diamond Spark, you know, join the server. Or if you don't want to, like, that's fine, honestly. We can try to figure something else out. And, that's pretty much all. So, all hail Whisper, and hope to see you in the next video. I think that's what I'm supposed to say, right?